Hi everybody, Ken Krogh here with Thom Harrison. He and I have become very good friends over the last couple of years. And Thom, you're now working behind the scenes with Operation Underground Railroad.
That's correct.
It's been amazing to hear some of the things that go on, some of the things that Thom's being asked to do. But you come from a background, 41 years in therapy and helping people bounce back from pretty difficult things. Do you mind giving us some of your background a little bit?
Sure. I started my career working at Primary Children's Medical Center. I started working for the Department of Child Psychiatry in their inpatient unit, and I worked there for a number of years, and then continued to work there after graduate degrees.
3 degrees, right?
And I started working as their clinical director of the child sexual abuse and child physical abuse program, where I told them that we would give them a few hours a week, and they said, yeah, we still want you to do your other stuff, which I was working in other areas of trauma and some neurotrauma and things of that nature. But by about 3.5 months of doing that, we had so many kids that were coming in who had been sexually abused or incestually abused that became my full-time position of working with kids that had been traumatized. And I continued working with the neurotrauma team, but I was just doing that full-time mostly. And stayed there for a number of years working in that department. Also started teaching during that time up at the university, which I continued for 30 years.
Wow.
I started teaching at the University of Utah in '77, and my last class I taught up there was in 2007. So that was 11 years ago. So I've worked with probably over 4,500 victims of sexually abused, children who've been sexually abused or physically abused or emotionally abused, mostly sexually abused. And that's what I taught at the U. I taught
Wow.
human sexuality, looking at the traumatic side of human sexuality and what happens when people are trafficked or abused or things of that nature. So just a few months ago, in October of 2017, I retired from a 41-year mental health practice and started working with Mobilize, which you're aware of, Ken.
Yeah.
And then after you introducing me to Tim Ballard, who is the CEO of OUR, I was asked to come on and help them with their aftercare with some of their trafficked individuals. And also I've had the pleasure of working with a few of the operations individuals, those who have gone out and actually rescued these children and some of their post-traumatic stress from
Wow.
doing that, as well as consulting with Mobilize, as well as consulting with Tim and some of the other individuals at OUR. Also recently had a wonderful opportunity to go to Idaho, and we had a new training where we met with quite a few individuals who wanted to become operation individuals.
I get that question all the time. Whenever we do an event where Tim is showing some of the things that are going on, people come up afterward and say, how do I get involved? You know, former police officers, military, and my own family members, some want to be part of it. They all want to be part of it, but it's not that easy, is it?
No, it isn't, because the Hippocratic Oath for physicians is above all do no harm. And we certainly, as Operation Underground Railroad, do not want to create any more trauma in an individual's life. We are rescuing those who, many of them, have had years of trauma. And we don't want to traumatize any individual who is desirous of helping. So we have a very rigorous program with John Lyons and some of the other trainers who are excellent, whose names I don't have permission to talk about.
Yeah.
So I'll talk about Tim and John and kind of leave the other ones anonymous, if you will. But there is a wonderful team of individuals who train and vet these operations individuals. And we have individuals from MS, the British intelligence, from Australian intelligence, from the Army Rangers, from the SEALs, from all over law enforcement, FBI, CIA, who are desirous to come and assist us in doing these rescue efforts. And, many of these individuals make wonderful military ops or make wonderful CIA ops, but it takes a certain breed of individuals to be able to go out and pretend to be an individual who wants to buy and sexually or inappropriately use a child. And so they have to be vetted very, very carefully. And some of these individuals who have had really good experience in these undercover situations are not so skilled at what is needed for OUR.
Yeah.
And so they're vetted very closely because we don't want to create trauma for a retired CIA officer or a retired individual, because it's gruesome.
Yeah. People aren't prepared to see kids in harm's way.
And they're not prepared to understand the horrific things that those who buy these children are doing with them. You can go back and read about slave trafficking and about sexual abuse. There are more slaves now in the world than there have ever been.
Wow.
And these children, some of them are being bought for organ harvesting. So people come in and they purchase these kids, and they end up in a hospital in a body bag with cuts over their vital organs, and their vital organs have been removed and sold in black markets or
It's just a fundraising device.
Right.
For terrorism.
The debauchery and the horribleness of what is happening now in the world with these innocent children has never been recorded or has never been seen before. I mean, it is the worst of the worst. And I don't want to shock people, but I want people to know that these aren't kids that have just been treated this way, but of course it wasn't this. Of course it was all the gamut. These children and these adolescents are being used for everything we could think of, but most people could never think of what these kids are being used for and the damage that is being done to these children. And so hats off to our head of aftercare, Jessica, who's just wonderful, who works with these individuals and helps orchestrate treatment programs that these kids can go to, and they can be sent to, and they can be helped, and they can be rehabilitated, and they can learn a trade.
Yeah.
Because most of these kids know nothing else. I mean, let me give you an example. Not so many years ago, there was a horrible earthquake in Haiti. And everyone in the world, in the nation, has heard about this. And it collapsed a great majority of the houses. And of course, many people were killed. but parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles were killed, and whole families were killed. And maybe one or two of the children, or maybe four of the children survived.
Wow.
And there was no place for them to go but the streets. And so that was a perfect storm for these abusers and these traffickers to then make their way on the scene and to scoop these kids up and say they were going to help them, or say that they were an orphanage, with red paint writing on the side of a brick wall saying, children's orphanage, and then bringing these children inside of walls where they were not fed, where they were housed in horrible circumstance and situation, where they were fed minimally, where they were clothed very poorly, and where they were just being prepared to be sold, sexually trafficked, organ trafficked.
So it's just a front.
Just a front.
Just a front.
Just a front. And it was one of these situations that our CEO, Tim Ballard, walked into and met two beautiful children who had lost their parents, and the older daughter had become a surrogate parent for this little boy. And Tim was given very strong impression that he needed to rescue these children. And that was one of our very successful operations. So multiply that by hundreds, multiply that by thousands, and that is what needs to be done. But it costs a great deal of money and a great deal of effort to be able to bring these people to justice and rescue these children. And there's so much work that has to be done. You have to find out, we have a legal team that calls and finds out what the laws are, and finds out who we can work with, and who can support us, and if they're willing to work with an organization. And it is tremendously time consuming to rescue one child, to rescue 10 children. But we don't care what the cost is. We will go in with a wonderfully trained team and rescue these kids. And imagine orchestrating all that aftercare, which Jessica has to do, to make sure that these people are prepared and ready to receive these children.
Because they can't go back to their previous situation.
Right. Many of them can't even go back to their parents.
Wow.
Or their uncles or their aunts. I'm working with a gal right now who was rescued, who was trafficked into the United States, who was rescued in the East. And it was her family that actually started this abuse process. And often it is fathers and mothers and uncles and brothers and husbands and that will bring these girls in, or these young men in, and start that horrific life of pain and trafficking. So you can't return them to a family, because the family often is what introduced them to this horrible life of trafficking.
Yeah, these are hard topics. But we were amazed just the other day. We were reading through Isaiah chapter 2, verse 6. And all of a sudden we saw, once again, Isaiah prophesied of something in our day. He prophesied of human trafficking, you guys. Can I read it and maybe
Sure.
talk about it?
That'd be great.
And this one's pretty well known. I'm going to start with verse 4. And he shall judge among the nations, and shall rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. We've all heard that one. Now listen to this. O house of Jacob, come ye, and let us walk in the light of the Lord. Therefore thou hast forsaken thy people, the house of Jacob, because they be replenished from the east, and are soothsayers like the Philistines, and they please themselves in the children of strangers. Isaiah 2, verse 6.
That's trafficking.
That's trafficking.
So
That's what's
Isaiah
happening.
saw it thousands and thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
And I find it interesting that he says, and they forsake themselves, because that's what happens. When you get into it, you lose yourself. You lose your soul. It sucks it up and takes it away.
Wow.
You literally lose yourself. And too many of them, it's gone, not to be returned, not to be found again,
Wow.
not to be recovered.
Yeah. And you know, I mean, you know what's possible with the area of recovery in the brain.
Yeah. You know, it's like heroin that we talked about earlier. It destroys, you know. So many people don't realize that stuff, the high might go away, but it's burning in the capillaries. It's destroying in the neurons. It's damaging. And, you know, when brain tissue is gone, it's gone.
Yeah. Now, I want to talk about one more thing, Thom. We've known each other for a while now, and one of the first things you shared with me was the challenges that some of our current military go through. I don't want to go into a lot of details, but one of the things that tough guys believe in is that it's okay to look at pornography, and these things don't have a lot of impact. It just impacts me, you know. But you know, I'm finding from the statistics that a lot of the people that end up involved in this perpetration overseas have been linked with the military, have been linked with this kind of, and yet, and here at home, you know, a lot of our folks, you know, are running businesses, and some, you know, we're using soft pornography or, you know, or provocative advertising as part of our business, and we're not connecting that far enough downstream, it ends up with what we're talking about with human trafficking.
Exactly.
Is that real? I mean, it amazes me.
Pornography is used as an opiate for the individuals who are in the military. It is actually distributed to them.
Wow.
And that was given to me by many individuals who are in the military, as well as by individuals in the administrative piece who talked to me about pornography use by our troops. And it is profound. And I mean, the problem is they believe it helps in combat. It helps.
That shark eye condition.
It helps in
numbness
war.
To killing.
But the problem is then what do you do with it after you're dismissed? Then what do you do with it after you get out? Then how has that affected your relationship with your wife? Then how has that affected your relationship with your children? Then do you believe you can't share that with them, so that starts that secrecy and that deception, which maintains even the deeper process of moving into it.
Yeah.
If you are using pornography, you've got to come clean, you've got to be honest, and you've got to share it 100% with those whom you love, or you are not going to beat it. You don't beat this on your own.
No.
So you've got to share it with the people you love. You got to share it with those around you, because then they will help pull you out of it.
Well, and we got to look at it from the other side. For a wife or a partner or someone who's aware that that's happening, it's almost as hard the other direction.
Oh, yeah, because they think, oh, you prefer that over me. Well, I can't compete with that. Well, that's why you don't want to kiss me anymore. That's why our relationship has changed so profoundly. Well, yeah, if you've been away, if you've been deployed for 18 months and you've been looking at nothing but pornography and then satisfying that through masturbatory behavior, that's going to be a huge adjustment when you get home, because a mutual relationship doesn't compare at all with a monosexual relationship. And what is being taught in the military is monosexuality. And when you learn that, it is ingrained, and it's easier. It's easier access. You don't have to be clean. You don't have to be kind. You don't have to be nice. You don't have to be anything. All you have to do is have a source and your own monosexual behavior. That is totally different than this side of the continuum when you have a wife, when you're coming home to a spouse, when you're coming home to a partner, and they want a mutual relationship, and you have almost destroyed, you've wiped out, you've put so much distance from that and this, that it's real difficult to then bring that back. It takes months, sometimes years to bring those two back. And we think, but we do that a lot. We teach violence and then we go home and say, okay, you can be violent in Afghanistan, but you can't be violent in Payson. We have to learn this non-violent structure and this non-monosexual structure. Monosexuality is monosexual. One, just takes one. But the majority of our relationships, the oneness you learn in that is not functional oneness for a mutual relationship.
Wow.
So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, very much so, very much so. And that's one element, you guys. We got to start talking about these things more. These are hard situations. The original Underground Railroad was successful because of awareness.
Correct.
And so, Tim has now chosen to come into the light. He can't go undercover anymore. We just filmed David Lopez, former Navy SEAL. He's amazing, Messianic Jew, long hair, tattoos on his arms of the 12 tribes of Israel. Last week, he was in the movie that's about to launch.
Right.
He doesn't get to go back undercover now, but he might do more good. So we've decided to let all of you see some of the people behind the scenes at Operation Underground Railroad and some of the work that goes on, the professionalism, the amount of time and care and cost that goes in, is because we have to do it right. I mean, the calling card of Operation Underground Railroad is that they make sure when they arrest these perpetrators, it sticks.
Right.
Can you talk about that a little bit? I mean, we have to be very careful and do it the right way, or they get out again.
Well, there are such things as corrupt governments.
Yeah.
And there are such things as corrupt police officers. And there are such things as corrupt attorney generals. And we have had that problem. And if you go see the movie, you will see that exact thing which took place in Haiti, where individuals who were arrested through an Operation Underground Railroad operation bribed some judges and were all set free to do it again. And within days, within weeks, a new operation had to be organized to go in and rescue some of the children that were already rescued and to arrest individuals. And under that circumstance, the corrupt judges were removed. And these people found their way back into jail and now are there. And working with those in the government who were not corrupt and who were wonderful and helped Operation Underground Railroad in a wonderful, supportive way, put these people back behind bars. And that was a great triumph for OUR.
Yeah, that documentary is just coming out. We're trying again to share some of the story of those who support this amazing work. 15, 17 countries around the world. And, I've noticed that there's a lot of work, like you mentioned, trying to prepare those who go in, and then afterwards they still come out and have trauma that they weren't prepared for. I mean, how do you deal with something like that?
The difficulty is the brain is an amazing thing, Ken. The brain will try and protect you and will try and shut down certain trauma if it knows continuously that you have to live in that. We call it clinically dissociation or dissociative disorder. And the brain has this wonderful capacity to shut down around that trauma so it doesn't kill you or cripple you while you're in it. But the difficulty is once you are out, once you've moved away from that, then the brain opens. There's a part of the brain which is often called the reticular formation, which is found in the same, it's the combination of the hippocampus, the hypothalamus, and the amygdala. And what it does is once that brain opens around that information, then that trauma can start out and try and get resolved. So often these individuals, with each year of freedom, with each year of being rescued, with each month, when they are in a safe environment, it might take 18 months or 3 years for the brain to believe that it is safe and it's not going to happen again. I work with people who are still having bad dreams, and they wake up and they thought, oh no, I thought I was back in it, or I thought, the same Johns or the same clients were back. And I just talked with a gal last week who said, I went to a church meeting and an individual walked in who looked like one of my clients, and that night I had this horrible dream return. And she's been out of it for longer than 3 years now. So you have to work with these people a long time. But when I started working with some of the individuals I've worked with, they were in their 20s and they were acting like they were 14 or 15. And within 18 months or 6 months, we start seeing them mature. We start seeing their cognitive age.
Does it catch up?
Catch up with their biological age.
I see.
And now she will take sorties back into her adolescence because she was never allowed to have an adolescence. She was a trafficked woman all throughout her adolescence, and
Lost her childhood.
And now she's having to have a childhood. She's having to experience some of the things. When I first met her, the first time I met her, she was, I believe, 19 or 20, and she wanted a stuffed animal. She'd never had a stuffed animal. And she wanted to go shopping, and she was buying clothing that was probably more appropriate for an 11 or 12-year-old, but she had never gone through that. So we let her move through that process, and now her clothing is much more age appropriate and what she wants and her needs. But she'd never been to an amusement park. She had never been able to have a room of her own where she wasn't sexual in maybe 16 times a day. Just one John after another. And her body's been able to heal. When we first met her, the whole floor, her whole muscle floor of her genital area was broken down, was damaged, was not very useful. There was infection, there were troubles, there were difficulties, and now that is healing and it's starting to operate and function more because she was being trafficked 9 to 20 times a day. And a body can't handle that. And I'm sorry for being so graphic, but the public needs to
They
know.
need to know. We can't
that
hide this anymore,
is
you
going
guys.
on, and it's horribly traumatizing, but there is hope. And we're seeing profound benefit in these young girls and these young men. The brain starts to make adjustments.
How
And
long does it take roughly?
I
for
would
someone to
say
come back
roughly a decade.
Wow.
And that doesn't mean therapy every week for a decade, but that means some kind of therapy, someone that can talk them through it.
Yeah.
Someone
who cares.
But they need to be offered a safe environment where there is no more perpetration, where there is no more victimization, where it is over. You talked briefly about, and I got off on a tangent there about how we choose these individuals. You can't have a Rambo
No.
because they're going to be cited. You can't have a person that is so police officer, so
Navy SEAL or
yeah,
Mr. Tough Guy.
that you walk him, go down the street, and you go up. Yep, I know who he is.
Yeah.
They have to be able to cover that in their cover,
Yeah.
and they have to work well with the team. Another thing about OUR that I love, that I personally love, is it's a Christian organization.
Wow.
And nothing happens without a prayer. Nothing.
That's in the movie. We saw David Lopez, asked by Tim. Tim has a prayer list where he notifies people, guys, we're going into darkness. He
Right.
sends out a text, and 5,000 people stop their day, and some companies fall to their knees. And Tim says, we feel it. We notice when those prayers start coming in.
And imagine the power when we get 50,000 people dropping
Yeah.
to their knees.
Or 500,000, you guys.
So the beautiful thing about it is we will not do anything unless we feel moved to do it by the Spirit.
Yeah.
And we feel moved to do it, and we know it's right. And then we go in, not by the seat of our pants, but knowing that God knows where these kids are.
Yeah.
Knowing that He loves these children. Knowing that they are His children. And knowing that He wants them safe. It is an amazing experience. These kids feel the difference. Many of them know immediately that, and they've been praying. We've had kids that have said, this was the 5th anniversary when I lost my parents. And I had given up hope that I would ever be rescued. But today I prayed for hope and you came. So it's a two-way street. These kids who are being trafficked, who are being dressed in provocative clothing, many of them were raised in Christian homes. They were raised by parents who loved them. But they were killed, or they were taken, or they were murdered, or they lost them through AIDS. An epidemic where some of them lost them through needle sticks or through just an epidemic piece. And so it's a two-way street. They're praying for us, we're praying for them. And on every op, there are miracles. Yeah. Not just interesting circumstances, not just possible coincidences. There are miracle structures where we can go. And I remember an individual that both of us know who was on an operation, and he was doing some filming for us and did a lot of the filming in the video that you will see, the presentation, the documentary. And he was strapping with duct tape this camera on the top of one of our operations helmet. And that was the man who was sent into hell and was able to film that which convicted, was able to do. And if you ask him, he says, I just felt like I needed to put a GoPro on that guy's helmet. And the footage...
Like a couple of minutes before it's go time, he's climbing over the seat, wrapping up with duct tape a helmet, and they're about ready to open the doors.
Right. And that was not a coincidence.
No.
That happens on operations. It happens in our offices. It happens daily.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, Ken, you've been in situations where you've worked with a group of men and women doing hard things, and the connection that takes place, the brother and sisterhood that comes about by doing really hard things. That's OUR.
Yeah.
There is a brotherhood. I had never met Dave Lopez. I had spoken with him. I had seen of him.
This guy's incredible.
But I'd never met him. And the first time I met Dave, I knew I loved him and I knew he was my brother. There was an amazing remembrance and recollection. I know this guy.
Wow.
And I think it was mutual.
Yeah.
But I can only speak for myself. Same thing with Tim. It feels like I have known Tim forever, and I haven't even known him for 2 years yet.
Tell us about Tim. I mean, people ask me all the time, oh, you know Tim Ballard, what's he like? What's he like behind the scenes? Is he always that intense? Is he always that focused? Tell us.
Yes. I do. Tim is a lion of the Lord.
Yeah.
Tim is a man of truth, and he is a man of conviction, and he is a man on a mission. And he is always in that mode of, what can we do? Where are we going next? What do we need to do? Where does God want to send us?
Yeah.
And because he is a man of God, he is a man of the Scripture, and he is a family man, and he is a man who loves his kids and loves his wife, and he is 100% devoted to his wife and to his kids. And I've had an opportunity to be with some of his kids and him, and I've had an opportunity to be with his kids for longer than a week. And you can see the bond, you can see the connection, you can see the trust, and you can see the openness. This is a man who talks with his kids and has taken his teenage daughter into places where slaves were bound and arrested and placed in hellholes for weeks and months. And the daughter and he spent time on their knees before they went there, and the door just happened to be ajar, or the nails were pulled out so they could go in and see. A man of faith, a man of God, a man of commitment, a man of integrity.
Yeah.
One of the best individuals you'd ever want to meet, and the man to run OUR, the man who has the vision, the capacity, and surrounds himself with people like John Lyon, surrounds himself with individuals who are
all kinds of individuals.
Yeah,
they come from all walks of life, from all religion, from no religion.
Right.
But they're truthful. They're good. They're straight.
Right. And I've worked in corporations before. I've worked in universities. I've worked with faculties. I've worked at hospitals. I've worked in clinics. And the politics at OUR is very different than the politics anyplace else, because every member of the team has a voice. And I have never been in a meeting or in a situation with Tim Ballard where he didn't stop and listen with full intent and gather before he made a decision. And so just a good fellow, just a good, strong family man, but one who has a passion towards children and loves them, and if he could, would save them all.
Yeah.
But, it's like the old story of the starfish. We have to look at it and say, it mattered for this one.
Yeah.
And, we keep going after the one and trying to save those.
But guys, we don't have enough Navy SEALs and SWAT teams. And the problem is we're trying to deal with this problem far downstream. What's at the headwaters? What's causing this craziness in our world right now?
Pornography.
Talk about that. We got to connect those dots more, don't we?
At the head of every individual who traffics these kids, every perp, every person who goes on these sex tours or goes on these vacations where they just are, they are just sexually trafficking. At the beginning, there is abuse, their own, usually.
So they were a victim once.
The majority of the time. And they've never resolved it. And they have gone to such horrible pornography use, the worst of the worst. And no longer can they be satisfied by being sexual with their wife or a partner. No longer can they gain any satisfaction from a normal, mutual, heterosexual relationship. They are moving towards buying, hurting, purchasing sex from a child. And but their stories are awful, but the same. And there is a progression, just like drug use can. You can start with Quaaludes, or you can start with painkillers or Oxycontin, and then move up to heroin. When you're on heroin, I've had people on heroin say to me, every week, I lost a different part of me. I could feel it going. And I've known amazingly bright people. I've known professors, I've known anesthesiologists, I've known surgeons, I've known lawyers, I've known politicians, I've known churchmen and churchwomen who have lost everything because of their drug addiction. And nothing is important except their methamphetamine or their black tar heroin.
Wow.
The same thing. It's the same process. It's the same road.
It's the same part of the brain.
Right, with morality and with addiction. And you cannot say this is not doing any harm, because this can lead to this, can lead to this, can lead to this, and you can find yourself in this place before you know it. And just like the heroin addict who says, I'm not going to do this again. This is the last time I'm going to do this. Right when they're done, 30 minutes later, you're looking for your next hit. You're looking for your next victim. And like I said at the beginning of our conversation, there is nothing that is going on right now in the sex trafficking, slavery world that is any less horrible than anything that's ever been written about. We are at the pinnacle. I can't imagine it getting worse unless it's just on every street corner. I honestly...
In some places it is.
I honestly cannot imagine it. I can't imagine our world becoming worse than it is right now when you look at the darkness of this.
Wow. And here we are, we're just a little bit in the background trying to help my company, InsideSales.com. We wanted to get involved to donate laptop computers and expertise to help these kids get back into a pathway to college. And everyone can do something, you guys. Everyone can do something. We just met with 30 or 40 of the top social media influencers, and they decided this was the cause they wanted to get behind. I remember Tony Robbins said, I've never heard of a more powerful cause than saving kids.
There is no powerful cause.
Yeah, and the Lord, that's where we're coming into some difficult times ahead. He's starting with the kids.
He is.
Yeah. So.
And you can see how difficult it would be, Ken, for you to then pretend that you are one of these traffickers.
Yeah.
For you to sit across a table with some cans of Diet Coke and some fruit and sandwiches and with $150,000 in $100 bills, negotiating with 3 women and 2 men in a foreign country or in New York or in New Jersey to buy some kids that have been living in the back of a trailer, on the back of a rig, or have been living in a barred area in a lower borough of New York and only allowed out when they're sold. This is happening. And imagine what you would want to do to those people.
Yeah.
And a person like Dave Lopez, and a person like some of the guys that we vet and ask to come on our ops, they could break them like a twig.
Yeah.
These are not small men.
No.
But they have to convince these traffickers that they want to buy these kids. And they have to do it in a way that is believable, and that they're going to take that money and deliver those kids.
Wow.
And then to have a group of police officers rush in, slam your face to the floor, handcuff you, stick you in a van,
Yeah.
and take you down because everyone has to be arrested.
Yeah.
And then when you get there, then you're let loose because they know who you were, because that's already been prearranged, and they know who are OUR representatives, ops, and who aren't.
Yeah.
That's a lot to ask someone. And the only thing that's moving them forward in that is the goodness of their heart and the great compassion they have for children.
Yeah.
They're not making lots of money.
No.
A lot of them are
No,
volunteering.
this is cause.
A lot
Like
of
Tony
them
said,
are-
the greatest cause he's ever heard of.
A lot of them are volunteering to
Yeah.
do this, to putting themselves in harm's way and at risk. That's why we vet them so closely,
Yeah.
because they are in the jaws of hell with the mouth wide open, striving to consume you. And the only time you know you're out is when the key goes in to the handcuffs and lets you go after you've gone through a 3-hour adrenal ride.
Wow.
That's a lot to ask of an individual. But there are those who are willing to do it and get no fame from it.
Yeah.
It's not that,
No.
their faces are all blocked out in the videos because we need to use them again.
Yeah.
And so there's no glory. The only glory there is in it is the glory you receive in your heart when you know that you've let free a child of God and given them a second chance.
We've got to do more, everybody. We've got to get involved. And, you've got a background that's been critical, that's been very helpful. There's other organizations that work a little bit upstream. I think of Clay Olson, one of the founders of Fight the New Drug. They've been at it for 9 years, and they're working more at the front end of the addictions as they're beginning and helping people get out. And you've mentioned that some of these kids can be reclaimed. A lot of times the perpetrators, the light's sort of gone. But maybe, can you talk about that for a little bit?
Well, I've had the wonderful opportunity of meeting with Clay on 3 occasions, and there's another great human being who has a vision and has an ability to reach out and really help. And I support his endeavors 100%, and I've had an opportunity to consult with him on 3 occasions. Great man.
You know, as we were mentioning, most of the time it sounds like when these kids are rescued with the proper help, the proper care, they can come back to a normal life. Is that what we're hearing?
Once the brain has experienced trauma, always some trauma will remain.
Yeah.
But there have been some studies about super kids, and that's the working at primary for years. I remember working in the neurotrauma team and talking to Jack Walker, who is the neurosurgeon up there, and sometimes we would go into a room of a kid who had been, shaken or hit or in a horrible car accident or in a motorcycle accident or had jumped off of Lake Powell and, hit an object in the water or something, or, many different things. And, inside the operating room, the OR, everything that could go wrong went wrong. And Dr. Walker would look back at me and sometimes I saw a few tears go down his eyes. And him saying, if this guy ever can talk again, it's a miracle. And sometimes these kids would wake up 3 or 4 days later, and we would look at each other, and a week later they were walking out of the hospital.
So what happens?
And so sometimes it's just not their time, Ken.
Yeah.
It's not their time to go. But I've also seen the opposite. I've been in an OR where everything went perfect. You couldn't have asked for a better surgery. There weren't any bleeds. There weren't any hemorrhaging. Everything went well. The a few holes had to be put in the brain to let the swelling out, and everything went well. And Dr. Walker would look at me and look at the team and say, I think we really saved this person. And they wouldn't make it till the morning.
Wow.
So I say that because miracles exist in Western medicine too. Miracles exist when you're working with these kids. Some of them are super kids. Some of them come out and 5 years, 10 years down the road, you're looking at this kid and it's like they have never experienced the trauma. But that is the exception instead of the rule. Then you look at some kids who are okay and they can function, but they suffer the rest of their life with anxiety, panic attack, with non-trusting of another person, of moving into kind of a hermit, recluse lifestyle. But even in those bad cases, they are doing better than when they were in the trafficking.
Yeah.
So the worst outcomes are better than when they were trafficked.
Yeah.
The best outcomes are a gift from God. They are a miracle that happens, and they happen more often than gives us credit. It's almost like our society doesn't want to hear the word miracle anymore.
Yeah.
It's like our society doesn't want to hear that God intervenes. But I tell you, I see miracles every day. And I know God is intervening. And if people want to say that's old-fashioned, I'll say I've earned my gray hair well. But I know He loves His children. I know He helps them, and I know if we're willing to offer up the best we have to offer, if we're willing to do the work and provide them with the therapy and give them what we can, miracles happen, and it's worth it.
Yeah.
And we are saving kids, and many of them are doing amazingly well. But we're giving them a trade. We're giving them education. We're allowing them to learn something else. And yeah, I'm sure some of them, a few of them might go back into the sex trade someday. I hope not. But I understand statistics, and I understand men and women, and we have our agency to choose. But the reality is, the majority of them do so much better than they would ever do without OUR's intervention.
Yeah. Well, I understand there's even been a few that you've been working closely with that have been rescued, and they've decided to tell their story.
That's right.
That changes the game. That doesn't happen.
Right.
So that's exciting, and
Right.
that'll be coming soon.
Yeah, I'm working with an individual who, that is her life goal, to tell her story. Like, you know, Harriet Tubman and some of the other.
Yeah.
I
And
think
Harriet
I've got it wrong.
Jacobs.
Harriet Jacobs.
There
That's
you
right.
go. Yeah.
Harriet Jacobs. Yes.
Yeah. Tom and I had the chance to go with Tim Ballard on the staff of a tour that he just took back east, started at Edenton, North Carolina, the story of Harriet Jacobs. We got to see where she lived in the attic of a small porch for 7 years as she had escaped, but she wasn't going to leave the town. She wanted to harass and be close to her children, but harassed the perpetrator, the slave master. The story's amazing, you guys. It's coming out in his new book, Slave Stealer, I think in September.
Correct.
But talking about miracles.
And I think Slave Stealer is the best of all of his books, but I've enjoyed them all. Maybe it's just because it's the one that I just finished reading, but it's wonderful.
Get ready for that one, you guys. It's
wonderful.
amazing. So, wow, we've covered a lot of ground. Where do you see it going? I mean, we've talked about the past, we've talked about what's going on today. You know, this movement is gaining huge momentum, but are we making enough of a difference? Is there enough people involved?
No,
Yeah. We're not there yet, are we?
because it's increasing exponentially every day, and we need to increase exponentially every day to fight it.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is, once it's out, once people know, once that it's spoken of and it is understood by the masses, then it will stop, because we won't allow it. The tragic thing, Ken, is the United States provides the great majority of the men and women who are trafficking these kids.
Wow.
They're doctors, lawyers,
Normal
real
looking
estate people,
people.
normal looking people that are going on these sex tours and trafficking these kids. We are the ones that are keeping it going. So that's why we are doing it in the United States. And that's why we're putting out these things so people say, this is happening here, and we are the guilty party.
It's us.
Without us, it would stop, because there would not be the funds to maintain it.
Wow.
We need to stop it. We need to start here in the United States of America and say, not on our watch, not here. We're going to scream this from the housetops until it is stopped.
Guys, we need your help. July 10th, OURfilm.org. Go out there and watch this new documentary. It's about to come out. Share it, spread it, make sure the word gets out. See what you can do in your home, in your business to make a difference. Will you join us? We're going to do our best. Thanks, Tom, for joining us today.
Thank you, Ken.
It's wonderful. We'll be talking soon with other folks behind the scenes at Operation Underground Railroad. Again, this is Thom Harrison, who's assisted greatly with the aftercare and the care of these wonderful kids as they get rescued. Thanks again, Tom.
Thanks, Ken.